Welcome to Tea Time with Bunky. This is message. Hi, Dan. All right.
Welcome to Tea Time with
Welcome to Tea Time with Bunky. This is super recent. Welcome to Tea Time with Bunky. I missed you guys. I really did. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this special Tea Time with Bunky. I appreciate you tuning in. Make sure, wow, there's a lot of people on here. Wow, girl, there's a lot of people on here. Thank you all for tuning in to Tea Time with Bunky. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join in. Tea Time with Bunky. You can catch me live on Thursdays, every Thursday at 7 p.m. on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. But everybody that's tuning on Instagram, I would really like for you to be a part of the conversation. And to be a part of the conversation, you are going to have to run over to my YouTube page, Tea Time with Bunky, or Facebook, Tea Time with Bunky. And this way you can chat live and be a part of everything that is going on. Because I can't see you on Instagram. I can't see your comments. And I'm really sad about that, but it's just not set up that way. So yeah, so join on in. A little bit about Tea Time with Bunky. Tea Time with Bunky is more than just a show. It's a safe, welcoming space where everyone can share their stories and life journeys, from survivors and advocates to community leaders and everyday voices. No story is too big and no story is too small. Each episode dives deep into topics that matter, from social issues and politics to self-healing and transformation. Like I said, join every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and become part of a community that believes in the power of sharing and healing together. So that's what Tea Time with Bunky is all about. Hey, I'm going to call people out. Wizardly Pine Cone. Okay. Hey, Shad. Thank you for tuning in on both platforms. My guest tonight. Tell you a little bit about, let me take these comments off. A little bit about my guest tonight. I think it's Leak. I didn't listen again. Sophia, I think Leak, she's going to correct me if I'm wrong, is a proud Sullivan County native and passionate advocate for justice and equality. A 2021 valedictorian of Liberty High School, she's now preparing to graduate from Vassar College with a bachelor's degree in education. We're going to talk about that too, your degree in education. Coming from a multiracial background, Sophia has made it her mission to uplift the voices of those often overlooked. She challenged her own school district to ensure student voices were respected and heard, especially when it came to decisions affecting their well-being. Today, she continues that work by staying informed and speaking out about policies that impact immigrants and vulnerable members of our community. Sophia is not only a change maker, she's also a lover of music and outdoors, embracing nature in all its seasons and sharing her joy through creativity. So let's welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Listen, thank you for taking the time out and being a part of Tea Time with Bunky.
Yes, of course.
So how are you feeling now? You good?
I'm feeling great. Yes, I'm so energized. I've got a couple friends on here. I'm feeling love and support. So yeah, I'm feeling wonderful.
Yeah, that's your friend, right?
Yeah, Wizardly Pinecone. Yes.
Okay, so I'm like, I've never seen that name before.
Yes.
Shout out to Chase. Well, okay. Thank you for tuning in. Okay. Look, I try to call everybody out. I really do. Some I may miss, but I just want everybody to feel like they're part of the conversation. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So let's start out. The topic is Voices Unheard. Voices Unheard. So you're fighting for immigrant rights. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about you. I want to know a little bit about you and what inspired you. So
I grew up in Sullivan County, New York. It's a large area, but the school districts were small. So I graduated in a class of like 100 people. And my mom grew up in the Finger Lakes, but she took a job at the high school teaching ENL, and my dad is from Guatemala. And I am super, super interested in protecting student voices. I grew up fighting my school board to ensure that, all students were treated respectfully. I would, run petitions around the school. I was student body president for a long time, and I was at the school from like 8 a.m. and sometimes till 9 p.m. And I play a lot of guitar. I love to sing with my friends. I love to be outside hiking with our dog. Let's start there, maybe.
Okay.
How's that?
That's really good. Thank you so much. When did you realize that something had to change? Like, what clicked in your head? Like, okay, this isn't right. Somebody has to do something. So when did that happen?
Yeah, so when I was young, my friends and I would talk about how where are our parents? Like, we're, always hanging out with one another, but, we always have those conversations about our families, right? And my father, growing up in Guatemala, was not able to get his degree. And so he came to this country, looking for a job, better opportunities for his family. And so that meant, him and my mom were negotiating a little bit between pay, right? And how many jobs could my dad really take on? And often my mom was the breadwinner of the family. And even then she was, taking extra tutoring jobs to make sure that we had a comfortable life. And it was also really nice that we had healthcare. A lot of my friends, would talk about being sick and not being able to go to the doctors. And we would talk about like my friends also having to go and work with their families. And I, as a young person, I didn't necessarily always understand that, like why the need to work. I saw everyone working around me. I started working at McDonald's when I was 14, and I've been, working ever since. And so I've definitely got a little bit of that in my blood. But I also couldn't understand like why my friends had to worry about bed bugs or why their homes got hot in the summertime until we started hanging out at each other's places when we were teenagers. And I could see then there's multiple families living in one home. It was a very kind of different situation than my parents had provided for me, but at the cost of like working a lot. And I was very privileged in that my mom had, these smaller things that I took for granted, such as healthcare, such as, like the fact that she wouldn't lose her job for any reason. She was tenured, and once we started talking about college and student loans, I knew some of my friends were undocumented, but they had come here, potentially at 2 years old or 1 year old or a baby, right? And so it didn't really mean anything to us as kids, but as you get older, you start paying attention to, oh my gosh, I can apply for this college, but my friend can't. And why is that? And how much financial aid can I get? And how much can they have, right? And I couldn't understand why the government would make my friends jump through so many hoops to have the same opportunities just because they weren't born here that I did. We've been here pretty much our whole lives the same time, right? And I still, quite frankly, don't understand that as an adult. But I think more specifically to policy level, how I got invested in all of this was way back in 2016 when Trump was approaching, the first election. There was a specific event that I remember specifically. It was May Day, Immigrants Workers Day. And I was in maybe 7th or 8th grade, middle school. And we were seeing all of these different posts on social media about like, there's going to be mass protests throughout schools and like host a walkout in your own school. And we're doing it in support of immigrants. And like most of my friends, right, are Black and brown or low income. And we're like, heck yeah, like, let's do this. We had, been taught about protesting before, but we never got into like too deep about the reasons why we were protesting. We just knew that like we wanted to be a part of something, even if we couldn't wrap our brains around it. And I had never organized a protest before, but it all came together in like one class period. We were sending out like mass text messages on Snapchat, like, hey, we're going to do a walkout and like, let's get as many people as we can. And we did it. And we walked out, we stood in the lobby of the school. We, stood there for quite some time, and then we went back into our classrooms, and the administration got angry with us, and they made us, all sit down as a group and asked us why we would do that. And
this is Liberty?
This is Liberty, yeah.
Okay.
And, we had been fed up our whole lives with learning about things that felt like they weren't speaking to us, right? Because we were also being taught Common Core curriculum, and we had state tests. And so our teachers were always, nailed to what can you teach to the test. And obviously, like, I understand now that perhaps their jobs were on the line if they didn't do that, right? Mm-hmm. So I can totally understand it now, but back then I was just like, why are you doing this? Why are you restricting us? We're not happy, right? And we felt like we had no say really in the classroom. And our teachers, like, granted, students and young people can be unkind. I don't want to say that we can't, but it was sort of like our teachers would give us shit right back to us. And it was sort of this like cyclical relationship of disrespect and distrust that we were kind of like in an impossible situation, right? They needed a job and we needed to be at school, and
Yeah, that's right.
But at the time, it made me feel so good to know that administration and teachers were upset at us, because I felt that the protesting that we were doing was directly, impacting someone in our community, and they were uplifting. And also I felt proud to anger those in power, because it meant that they were paying attention to us, right? And when that was in May, and then Trump got elected, and there were fights that broke out in our school between brown and white students.
I was going to say, really? Then you clarify now. Oh, yeah, of course. Oh.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. And, we're 13, 14-year-olds getting into fights over this. And so that was a moment for me where I was like, this is way bigger than even something that has ever really happened in our lives before. Because we
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
13 years old.
Yeah.
And there were like racial fights. See, this just sounds crazy to me, because I guess I was like in my own bubble when I was in school, right? There wasn't a Trump in office. Put it like that. There wasn't someone who just said, okay, it's okay to hate people who don't look like you. There was nobody that openly said that, and people just ran with it. So to hear that 13, 14-year-olds are fighting people of a different race just because, or different migrant status, just because, that's crazy to me.
And granted, I don't think that the students that were involved really understood what was happening. There was just a lot of like, oh, Trump doesn't like Latino people, and I don't like you, and like, using a lot of like, you suck, and like, Trump makes America great language just pisses people off, right? So I don't really think that they understood what was happening.
No,
but
they
granted,
can't understand.
Right. And granted, our teachers and our administration were like, we are not talking about politics in our school at all. And so that led to, the silencing of conversations about, differences in race, and why are Black and brown people pushed to the outskirts of the town, and why do they not have access to these resources, and why are, all of these things we were not allowed to talk about. And it just angered, the students even more. And so
what you guys were doing was what John Lewis called getting into good trouble.
Yeah, I thought so. Right.
Yeah.
I definitely thought so. And all of that led me to pushing back against like teachers and administrative overreach in high school, especially at the school board level, when I advocated for respecting student voice. And I spent a lot of energy as class president to make people feel seen and supported, even if they didn't speak English, even if they were classified by the school or classmates as needing to be isolated from the mainstream or whatever. I just really wanted people to feel cared about and to care for others. So that's sort of like how I got my inspiration. And also, like, my mom is a big advocate in the community. She was always taking me to like house calls, obviously, because she didn't have child care, and like she had to take me with her. And at the time I was like, oh, Mom. But like, I really got a beautiful look at the care that my mom gave to community members, and the love and the resources that she would find for them. And, the community really raised me, because speaking Spanish is a big thing in our community. And even though my dad was from Guatemala, when he came here, he was really interested in speaking a lot of English
Right.
because, he thought he needed to get a job and he wanted to be accepted by, I'm not going to maybe put words in his mouth, but my experience of it was that he was trying to maybe speak to and adhere to the white values of the community of Sullivan County at that time.
And at the current time is what it is.
Yeah.
It's like,
right.
right.
And so I always felt like I was not necessarily fitting into the Latina circles, or I wasn't always like white enough for the white people. And so I had to learn from my community and my peers of like, what does it mean to be proud of where you come from? Right. And does the color of your skin really matter when it comes to standing up for something that you believe in, right. if it's like in your blood? And quite frankly, it's in all of our blood. And I think that it's our duty and our responsibility to every single person who has come before us to speak up and say something. And so the community raised me. They're the reason why I'm here. They're the reason why I like feel inspired to continue to come home and do work at home. I think it's so important that they were the like heart of why I'm speaking out now. So yeah.
Well, I want to thank you first off for sharing the story between your mother and your father, because it helped me get a better understanding, because you explained how your father would work so much just to try to equal out or come close to your mother's pay. And I never thought about that. All I know is that a lot of Hispanic people that I know work a lot. I'm like, they work a lot. Like they do. And you talk about the number of people in a home and everything. We see that now. And you help give like a real face to it, help people better understand instead of an outsider looking in and trying to figure out why, I mean, even though we know why they're trying to survive, like the little jobs and that you opened up a light right there. So thank you for that. That was really personal. So thank you.
And of course, and I think maybe just to say one more thing about you were saying that why do Latina people like work a lot, or why what's going on there? And I think that when you are, for whatever reason, leaving your country of origin, you have to leave a lot of things behind. You have to leave your home, your car. You have to leave your your refrigerator, you have to leave your oven, all of these things. And so when people are trying to move somewhere new, it's not just, finding a new house that someone might sell you as a person who may be undocumented, may not have access to healthcare, may not have access to transportation to get to a job. All of these factors come into play when you're arriving in a new place. And I think that's a really important thing for people to realize, is it's not just like, hay una cultura de trabajo, right? There's not a culture of working. All that, maybe there is, but it has to come from somewhere. And I think that Latina people have known for a long time that like, they have had to take care of themselves and one another. We see, many Latina people still living in intergenerational households, and that I think is a beautiful thing to also step into as well.
It is. Family, and people around that don't look like you or look like Black or brown people or whatever. They need to understand that, like the immigration situation, the migrant situation, almost everybody except for Native Americans came from someplace.
Yeah.
You came from someplace, or you were born here. The birthers, they call them that the man is trying to take away. And everybody came from somewhere, and you have to remember, empathize. They're starting from scratch. They're losing things. People are coming to this country for a better life that have doctorates degrees or whatever, and have to clean hotels and things like that, start all over. And then you have people looking down on them. Oh, they're, you hear the things, oh, they're lazy, they don't want. No, these people work harder than people I know. They work very, very hard, so
and I appreciate that you said that as well, because oftentimes, right, people do have degrees or can have degrees from their home country, and when they come to the United States, if like they are licensed to be a teacher in Mexico, those papers, that documentation is no longer valid to be teaching in a Missouri high school. And so you do have to invest in more schooling, and you don't have access to student loans. And you're right. I think that's such an important point to touch on. So thank you for bringing it up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, how have the deportation policies impacted people around you?
Yeah, I think that maybe we could talk a little bit about the deportation policies that have maybe shifted under Trump.
Now, you're more
So-
versed in this than I am, so I'm just gonna follow your lead because, like I
Yes.
told you, I'm learning, and that's the point of the show. To
Yeah.
learn. Okay.
Of course. So I think that it's important for people to think about why this newer version of Trump is actually different than what he was before, because like he was just getting his foot in the door last term, right? And so they were kind of scrambling to feel like, where can I take power in one place? How might I take power in another place? But I think like we can especially see with Project 2025 and the outlining of it is that Trump and the people around him, that's as you should. Trump and the people around him, they denied that they knew anything about it.
Yes.
But the scale of this scheme for taking over the government is in there. It's outlined. They've thought really hard about it. And they've thought about how to use the justice system to turn them into engines of executive power to remake all of society. That's really what Project 2025 is all about. And it's actually way more radical than like folks thought. And Democrats really did not take them seriously when they said, like, we want to go through these things if we were,
would? In all reality, would you really think somebody wants to dismantle the Department of Education? Like, what sane person really wants to do these things? What sane person wants to take away equal rights and take away everything that people have worked so hard for? That's why they probably didn't take them serious, because like, who does that? Like,
right. I mean, I think for us, like you and I agree that we would not do that, but I think there's a real like grab for power and for respect and for sort of like forcing people to do that in a way that isn't democratic. And that's what we're seeing, right? So Trump is using, and his administration is using in this term, coercive authority to force people to live the way that his administration desires in a way that other conservatives leaders in this country had not prior to this term. And so what we're seeing is that Trump and his administration is in mass stripping people of legal status and deploying tactics that other fascists around the world have done throughout history. And so a couple of things that are new in this term was the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act, which what happened in March. And this was when there were 3 plane loads of alleged gang members that were sent back to El Salvador to a terrible prison without due process or even any evidence supporting that they were in gangs. And this prison is known for human rights violations. And so Kilmar Arprego Garcia is the name that we hear in the news a lot. It's the husband of a mother and a couple kids, and he was one of the men deported, and the lawyers sued. And Trump and the El Salvadorian president Bukele just laughed about it. And like he said, a federal court can't order a president to engage in a foreign diplomacy thing. But the problem is when someone leaves the United States soil who doesn't have the documents that they need to be here, is that the US system no longer has he's right, any jurisdiction over them. And so it was a problem that they were already in the sky when the judge demanded that the administration send them back. And he was like,
tell them not to do it. He told them not before they left. And didn't they leave anyway?
I don't know that they would. I haven't heard that claimed out loud, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the situation that happened. Right.
Out loud.
Right. And so the thing about this is like, we should be worried because due process exists for a reason. Everyone should be fairly judged if they have been at fault or not. Due process does not mean that everyone is innocent. It means everyone has a fair shot to prove themselves innocent. Right. And so even when Trump was tried in court, he felt very strongly that he should have due process. And in the United States, it's a facet of our system of being, that we don't put it all on one person to accuse, try, and convict someone. We have juries, we have judges, we have an adversarial system, which I can come back to because I'm still not a big fan of the justice system in general. But that's one thing, right? The invocation of the Alien Enemies Act, removing people without due process. We also see that he's forcing immigrants to register in a national registry through executive order, I think it's 14159 or something, which anybody who doesn't do that is now committing a crime, punishable by fines, imprisonment, or both.
Really?
And this type of behavior was used during World War II against Japanese immigrants, German immigrants, Italian immigrants, so that officials could find people when it was time for them to do mass sweeps of detaining people in camps. And that was done, in mass. And we also see that he has deported already, Trump, US citizens. We have documented children on flights with their parents being sent back to countries. There was a couple of young children with cancer who left without access to their medication. He's also arresting and detaining US citizens. We have, 19, 20-year-olds being picked up in Texas and New Mexico. And oftentimes, there's this case of a 19-year-old from New Mexico who had learning disabilities and was illiterate, and even though had told officers that he was a citizen, they didn't take him seriously until the community rallied behind him and was like, get him out, because he was documented.
Did they get him out?
Yes, they got him out. Yeah.
Okay.
We also see foreign students being attacked at universities, right? We have Mohsen, Mahmoud, and Rubiemza, who were, taken by masked, unidentified men for engaging in free speech, which is a right protected by our Constitution.
Exactly.
And so, it's not just gang members. I think that they're trying to use these specific groups of people who maybe other folks would deem bad people, right? We should be deporting gang members. We should be deporting people who are committing acts of domestic violence. But at the same time, those people deserve a due process. And the fact that we've already seen within the first, couple months of his administration that US citizens, US nationals, international students who have been protected here forever, he's going after all of them, even universities like
but
Harvard.
Funny to me? What's hilarious to me, they're going after people who weren't born in America or anybody who's not like them, right? But his wife isn't from America. Her parents aren't from America. His grandparents weren't from America. It's really crazy to me. It used to be, well, not used to be. It's still a thing. It's still a thing. When Elon Musk had came out, and basically they wanted white South Africans to be able to come to America, but they stressed white Africans, so it's really crazy. They have their idea of what they want America to look like, and that's blonde hair, blue eyed, and this thing of paying women $5,000 before taxes that have more children,
guess who also did that? Stalin. And guess who also did that?
China,
Hitler.
Right?
Yes. Hitler did that, and Stalin did that, and they were giving people, women who had 8 or 9 children would get award or medals and all these different things. And it's the birth rate is not the problem. If you want to address people and their needs, you would provide childcare in the workplace so that mothers could be closer to their children. Exactly. You would give mothers
sources away,
Exactly.
You wouldn't do those type of things.
And I think that, I don't think that it's going to be I think we can talk about Project 2025 and the ideas that are in it. But one of the things that is highlighted is this idea of, the traditional family. And, what does that mean? They want women to
say, what does the traditional family mean? Because it's different for every culture. So are they talking about a specific, there has to be just a certain culture, because everybody's traditional family does not look the same.
Well, when we think about it, right, the United States was based off of the Christian faith. We say, we put their hand on the Bible when we're testifying in a court of law. We put our hand over our hearts and, we speak
Pledge
about God.
allegiance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We speak about God when we're saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And I think that it's not something that surprises me that whatever their interpretation is of the Bible is leaking into the government. I don't ever think that there has been a true separation between church and state ever. I think that
Not a true separation. No.
Right. And so it's not really surprising to me that maybe the values that they're pushing is not for like women to be supported in the life that they want to live, but it's to suppress women and keep them at home and have them, be paid to stay at home. But women are pissed off when they're not allowed to do the things that they want to. If they want to be let free, let them out. This is not, women are not the people that you want to be coming after, for real.
No, they're not. We're the backbone.
And I think
really.
Yeah, and I think that people had faith that before this presidency, that the law in the Supreme Court and courts in general would confidently say, no, they're going to stop, shitty things from happening. But now the Supreme Court has ruled that presidents are allowed to commit crimes. So
but that's because he put his people in. So before he put it, there was a little bit of hope. But we saw him packing the courts in his favor. We shouldn't be surprised, even though it still makes no sense that people are that, in my mind, evil. It makes no sense. But he did it. He put those people in place that will go along with everything he says there. His little puppets, which is crazy to me. Like, you went through all of that to bow down to someone? Like, come on, just smarter than him.
And I think that
smarter than him.
I know, and I've really been trying to myself try and stay away from the conversation of like he's evil or like he's a bad person.
I say that all the time. No, he is. You don't have to say it, okay?
That's really fine. I respect you. Yeah.
He's an evil man. And his cabinet, the evangelical Christians, they're cultish. They really are. The way they behave, it's totally not. They take chapters from the Bible that works for them, and they distort it and they change it. See, I'm not a big fan of evangelicals. I don't know too many evangelicals personally. But if they act anything like these people, I don't know.
I don't want to hang out with them for sure. But I think like I was a very pissed off kid, and I'm still a very like pissed off young person. Because I thought that people were choosing to be evil. I thought that people were choosing to like be hurtful and do bad things. And I think that when you are a child, when you're a young person, you are testing the boundaries. You are watching everyone around you to see how they're responding to the world, right? And so if you are surrounded by folks who genuinely listen to your words when you're speaking at the dinner table, or, want you to have a say in the books that you're reading or the food that's being put on your table, I think they feel supported. But I don't know what Trump's childhood is like. I don't know what his social circle was like. And if his programming is to make choices that hurt others or that, in some way protect him and the people that he cares about, I think that he's not interested in any other choice because that was his programming. And I want to believe that people can change their programming, but it takes a lot of... I think they can, but it takes a community of people to not only call them out on when they're not being nice, but it also requires us to learn our own boundaries. Like, what is it if someone is evangelical, right, and hasn't grown up in a society or culture that allows them to make a firm boundary and hold that and have that respected? I think that they're going to find themselves time and time again being walked over by people who don't have their best interest in mind and accept that because it's hard to break and override the programming of, being disrespected.
See, I grew up in I love my foundation. I'm not gonna lie, so people don't come for me.
As you should.
Apostolic Pentecostal. I love
Mm,
my foundation, but it's hard. It's
yeah.
when you look at some of the rules and everything. I mean, like we growing up, we couldn't wear pants, we couldn't wear makeup,
Mm,
all of that.
yeah.
And it took me being almost 50 to start to sit back and be like, wait a minute, some of this stuff isn't right. And
Yeah.
you have to learn the Bible. Me and my friends, we talk about this. You got to learn the Bible for yourself, not
Mm,
go by what everybody's saying. Everybody's saying. You got to
mm,
learn it, understand it for yourself, and learn to deprogram yourself
mhm,
because you're really programmed in that.
yeah.
But you still know right from wrong. You know when something's not right. And if you're just going along with the flow, then you're just as bad. That's just how I feel about
I think that there is a responsibility that comes when you are an adult and you have perhaps more perspective
it. Right,
on other choices to make. And
right,
if you make a decision that is going to hurt someone else
right.
as an adult with all of that perspective and all of that experience, I think that is wrong. And I
Yeah.
think that's hurtful. And I think that it causes real damage to communities. But I think that if people, are living in small towns like where I came from and don't have the ability to get out and see the world or be exposed to different social circles and have different types of conversations, and they just like continuously just live in the very small population of which they come from, not
Right.
only will they not get those perspectives, they won't have the ability to make a different choice, I think, because you can't do better unless you know better. And
Exactly.
so I think that it's maybe not the case for everyone, but I think that this administration definitely knows what they're doing. And
They know
all
what to
of
do.
absolutely, all of these actions are very
Yeah.
deliberate, and it's a power struggle, and
Yeah.
they're not interested in protecting any of the working class. And we
No.
should take that seriously. We should take people seriously.
Yeah, they're out of control. They're really out of control. So, what happens? What happens to families and communities when someone is deported?
Mm. Well, I think that there is a lot of rallying behind a person, especially like if someone is being picked up, it causes a
Mhm.
lot of fear because obviously people know ICE is in the area. We need to hide. How long are they going to be here for? And so I think
Terrible.
the initial point of contact causes a lot of chaos.
Mhm.
And then I think it calls people in to mobilize. So there was a school bus that was stopped of farm workers in Albion, New York, up north.
Okay.
And there was people who were taken and being held, and their community rallied around them and are protesting in the street to like, you have to release these people. And we have seen that happen a couple of times in other places in the United States, be successful during that time. So I think that there is a big call for we need to speak up, we need to put public pressure on, and I think that's really cool.
Mhm.
I think that families who experience a member of like a close loved one being deported, I think that it, number one, affects their household income, right? It affects how much another parent has to work, how much maybe a child in the family will have to take on another job in order to support that. It's shifting a lot of the responsibilities within a family who, maybe have depended on that parent or whomever it was.
Right.
I think it also causes confusion for children. Like, why does the government hate my family? Why? We
Right.
haven't done anything wrong. Why are they following us around? Why do we need to know the fullest extent of the law in order to defend our parent? Why aren't they given a lawyer to defend themselves in immigration court? There's a lot of questions that come up. And I think that if there's another parent who is able to stay, I think it causes extreme pressure, and it causes extreme sadness and isolation. And, a lot of people are asking you what you need or what you want. And I think that it's hard to manage one's mental health in any situation. But if you are living in a state of fear and isolation, you are feeling quite depressed and helpless. And so you would do anything to protect your children.
What's sad listening to you, like you're still a child to me. So listen from a child's perspective, that you're dealing with this, like you have to deal with this. And it just brings me back. I always got to go back to the Black plight. our journey. We've been followed and falsely accused and targeted and always treated less than
Yeah.
forever. And that sadness it's real. And wouldn't wish it on anybody, wouldn't wish those feelings. And you can't change it because you can't change the way you look,
No.
like you can't
No,
change
and
that.
I think there are levels to violence, right? There's direct violence. We can punch someone in the face and we've been violent to them, and that's one thing. But there's also structural violence, and
Yes.
that is policy that are in place to
Right.
keep people in a state where they can't make their own decisions.
Right.
And we have those types of institutional violent policies against Black and brown people, and we have forever in this country.
It's the structure of
Yeah,
the
and I
fibers of
think
the country.
and I think that maybe this is a good point for me to say that, like, I want to be clear that I am not of the opinion that the immigration system has ever been fair for folks coming here, especially people who are entering through the US-Mexico border. Because first of all, many border and customs agents are untrained. They are ex-cop, ex-military, sometimes white supremacists, and see those people who are entering the United States as foreign enemies, right? Not mothers and children.
No.
And so that often leads to the abuse of people who encounter the agents, right? We see people being like punished and beaten with rods when they're trying to come in, or,
and they're coming here for a reason, for a better life. And like that's, oh my God, it's just horrible.
And I think that, like,
horrible.
We also know that in criminal proceedings, a person who is going to be a defendant, they get a lawyer, even if they cannot afford one. And immigrants do not have the right to a government-paid attorney in immigration court, even when they are facing deportation. And so yes. And so as a result, many low-income residents are left behind without any representation, or are forced to represent themselves in court, regardless of their age or their language abilities, against government-trained attorneys. Can you imagine? You don't know a language. You don't know the legal system. All of us are getting our wake-up call that we need to know what our rights are now. But these folks have had to know that from the second that they've walked into this country, even without having a basic education, even without having access to internet, even without having access to, the ability to even read a legal document, right? Whatever.
And the barriers, like the language barrier.
Yes, even for me,
us different. It's crazy. Like
yes. And when folks, come into the United States, they're often given some paperwork, right? And if that paperwork, that notice to appear, is not properly explained to that person who may or may not be literate, right? They may not have any idea that they're supposed to be appearing in court at a specific date. And some folks, like, how can they, if they miss that date, then they are subject for pickup. So the system is not only failing them at the border, but the papers that we're giving them, if they're not, supported, of course they're going to be seen as like breaking the law, right? Because the policies are violent, right? So I think that the reality for undocumented folks in this country and for their children has been that they live in a constant state of fear, and that people have spoken up at the horrors that have been taking place at the detention centers. We know that women have been forcefully sterilized. There's forced separation of children from their parents. There's freezing cold temperatures, and folks are not giving blankets. There's no usage to the bathroom, sometimes for days. And not to mention, like, people are hit and pushed by officers, even if you're a child. And this is happening in our country. It's not happening somewhere else. It is happening to the people that live in your town. It's happening to the people that make your pizza. It was happening to, your friend's child's mom, who comes over to your house all the time. It's not necessarily, like, I want to say that these cases are few and far between, but increasingly
Right.
Yeah, they're not.
They're not.
And hay una cultura, there's a culture for undocumented people and immigrants to not speak up for themselves or to want to fight for themselves, because if you grew up in a dangerous place
Right.
where your neighbors couldn't be trusted, and you have to find a way to survive, you are going to take or accept shitty situations, like taking jobs with unsafe working conditions or not being paid fairly, because people would rather live in hiding than to put themselves at risk returning to the danger that they were fleeing. And I think that many American citizens are waking up to the idea that these right violations could happen to them, and I think that's important.
Now they are. Well, how does it feel to be young and speaking up in a climate and that often silences people, because you don't seem afraid to speak, which is great. Great. So how does it feel to be so young and speak? Well, you've been speaking out since you were in school, a young teenager, but how does it feel to have a voice where people are actually listening to you now? You're really valuable. You're helping me a lot tonight.
Well, it's a little scary, to be honest. I think that I haven't really been taken seriously by the adults in my life for, until I got to college, and professors were really interested in the work that I was doing. And I had the opportunity to meet other types of adults that had different relationships with me. And so I feel, it's nerve-wracking to be taken seriously, because I have to, be careful of the things that I say, and I have to really mean what I say. And, when I was younger, I could say kind of whatever I want, and like, who cared? And I think that there's a beautiful responsibility that's come with it. And that feels a little heavy. But at the same time, I thank my mom for her ability to use her own voice. Even though she didn't speak Spanish, she learned Spanish, she learned German. She was trying to.
Is that Penny?
Yeah, her name's Penny.
Yeah, because I'm like, I peeped it. I'm like, okay, this must be mom. Okay.
Yeah,
good job, mom. You did a good job.
But it feels great. I have a lot of wonderful friends around me who share the same values that I do. And thankfully, I was able to meet them in college and, keep friends from high school. And I feel really seen and supported by my peers who are also speaking out, who are also protesting, who are also raising petitions, who are also doing really important research about race, class, and gender, and having difficult conversations in our spare time. We don't hang out and just, paint or sip some coffee. We're having difficult conversations about how we would restructure the government in a way that makes sure that everyone has free healthcare, everyone has free access to information and to transportation. I think I'm very lucky that I have people who are focused on that. So I feel good. I feel excited, and I feel like I'm coming into the coolest version of myself that has ever existed.
You guys, your generation is amazing. And you have a great village. You really, really do. But as you see, it's time. It's not going to end after this, but it's time for Fact or Cap, right? So
yes, let's do it.
Fact or Cap is a little segment where you all can join in. Okay, you all can join in. It's a segment where I ask a question. Is it a fact? Meaning, is it true? Everybody has their own opinion on this. Or is it cap? Meaning, it's not true. There could be a little wiggle room in between. But so here's the first fact or cap. Fact or cap? Most undocumented immigrants are criminals.
Cap. Big cap.
Big cap. Big cap. What do you guys think? Wait. That's, more young. You need to get involved. So I agree with you. That's a cap. That is not true at all. Actually, it says that two natives are 2 times more apt to commit a crime than someone who isn't, documented. Because first of all, why would they want to put that on their, who would want to do that, right? Nobody is going to put a bullseye on their back and run around and commit crimes. But as we see, like with the school situations or whatever, those they're native,
Cap,
and it's cap.
Everybody's capping it, and I think people need to understand there are 62 million Latina people living in the United States, plus, how many more who are also immigrants, undocumented, whoever. And the 11 million of them are undocumented from the Latina population. And so if we were even to deport as many people as they want to, I don't think people understand the economic cost that would come with that. Like, it would cost the United States $46.8 billion in federal taxes in order to make that happen.
To deport people.
To just for us to like do the things that they want to deport.
Mhm.
And if they lost the 8.3 million undocumented workers, 4.8 of all of the US workers, then we're reducing our workforce and our GDP by 2.6%, nearly 5 trillion of our GDP, right? I don't think that people really get that.
No, they don't. And you know what? So I'm going to do the number 3 one since you hit that.
Yeah.
And then I'll go back to number 2. So our next factor, Kat.
Yes.
Immigrants take jobs from Americans.
Cap.
Big cap. Big cap, big cap, big cap. Because they are hard workers. I mean,
14% of all agriculture jobs are done by undocumented people, and 12% of all construction jobs are undocumented people. 8% of manufacturing jobs in the United States are undocumented people. And so not only will our food prices increase, not only will housing and construction prices increase.
Like they are.
Right. We already see that. So no, immigrants are not taking jobs from Americans. They are just taking the more dangerous jobs that people are not putting into policy, you know, to protect them.
Right.
And they can't necessarily always speak up for themselves. And so they're accepting lower wages, not living wages. $15.50 is not even living wage in New York State. So not even citizens who are making $15.50 are being treated fairly.
No, they're not. And like I always use the example of the chicken market here in Paulsburg. I'm not killing and gutting chickens, and I'm not only, it's people that you see that are migrants working there. And I say that only because I've seen situations when ICE was coming through, how they would the saddest thing, like they would just take off and leave their jobs. And it used to be like this with the steam laundry in Woodridge that used to be here. A lot of migrants would work there because they were doing jobs people didn't want to do. Nobody wanted to work in a hot steam place in 100-degree weather. So this thing right here, I think it's just people that just want something to say and they're miserable and they just want to blame people for their laziness. Right? Her data is killing it, right, Shamika? She is on the data. She is on it.
And if people want to also like cross-reference these, and you want to look it up yourself, the data that I'm pulling from is from a study done by Unidos, UNIDOS, and you can just look up Unidos undocumented, and you can find the economic statistics of what it would mean to lose undocumented people in this country.
UNIDOS?
UNIDOS, yes, Unidos.
Okay. Okay, so my next fact or Kat.
Yes.
Okay. My last factor, Kat.
Okay.
ICE can't detain people at schools or hospitals. Fact or Kat?
So this actually falls somewhere in the middle. It depends on a lot of things.
Okay.
It depends on the policies that an individual school has and a hospital have. For example, there are spaces that are designated public and private spaces within a school and a hospital. So a waiting room in a hospital is considered a public space. Okay. However, you need to have a sign that says an area is a private space in order for ICE not to be able to enter it. That means that your employers need to know that they have to put private signs on the doors of people's rooms, because an open door to ICE is consent to search or seize.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yes. Okay. So ICE can go into public places and they are allowed to. However, the employer also needs to know that the ICE agents need to have a federal warrant signed by a federal judge. The date needs to be within 2 weeks of the expiration that's on there, or else it's no longer valid. All of the spelling needs to be correct in order for that to be valid. The address of the place also needs to be correct and spelled right. So there's so many things that go into making sure that someone can pick someone up at a school or a hospital. So the employer would be met with ICE. Do you have a warrant? they have to check over the warrant, and then they have to, potentially contact their lawyer. So that would be the next step. If the school and if the hospital did not have these types of procedures in place, not only are they putting workers at risk who may be Black or brown or, maybe approached by someone, but they're also putting themselves at risk and their patients and their students, right? So we've seen a lot of schools come out and recently saying that there's a procedure that they're following. ICE can come into, the waiting area of a school, but then they would be met with, they would have to wait for the school lawyer, they would have to meet with administration, they would have to call the parents of an individual. And, there's a lot of steps that have to be followed, but that plan needs to be in place.
Or it should be, because we know they don't always follow the rules.
Exactly. And I think that it needs to be made public as well, because I think that people who are going into these spaces need to know how the people around them, who are the business owners, are going to be supporting them or not, and maybe make a different decision about taking their children to a different school or a different hospital that may have a policy that would protect them.
Oh, wow. That was some really good information. That was, because I instantly was like, no, they can't do that. But you school me. But like I said, as we know, they don't always follow the rules. So then technically they can't just run in and be like, oh, well, we're here to take. Do they say names, or do they just look like that's? Do they say names, or do they just look and take people? Because that's what it's sounding like to me.
Yeah, exactly. I see my mom saying everyone needs to know their rights on there. And that's why so much of the work that, immigrant defense groups are doing right now is informing people, because ICE can in any place say, Bunky, you anywhere? And if you respond, then they know that it's you, right? So maybe they don't have your picture, but they know your name. And so that's a tactic they use, right, is to try and call people's names in public. But I also think, like, if you are approached by an agent, exactly as my mom says, you need to know your rights. So what do you do if you're approached? How do you know your rights? Right. Well, there's so many great presentations done by, like, the New York's Immigration Coalition, Adelante Student Voices. You can look them up now. Thankfully, so many folks have been putting wonderful and factual information out there. So a big thing that you're seeing around towns right now are red cards. And on these red cards is, in English and Spanish, a list of what you should do if an ICE agent approaches you. And it also has the invocation of your rights. So it can say, I am invoking my right to stay silent. I am not giving you consent to search me, because sometimes they'll say, oh, we found something in your car, or, oh, we found something on your person. Yeah,
that's what they do. That's what they do.
And so if you find yourself in a situation and ICE comes to you, you should have a red card and you give it to them immediately.
How do they get a red card?
Good question. You should look around at local businesses. Lots of times our local people now are carrying red cards right on their front desk or whatever. You can also order them online. You can just look up red cards, and they come, I think, they come in so many different languages: Tagalog, Chinese, Spanish, of course, Italian, stuff like that. And so you can order them in whatever language is important to you. You can also print them out and cut them up and glue it together. And it's not necessarily red, but it's a card that has the invocation of your rights. And so even if an agent was to detain you, then not only have you done all the correct things that you needed to, you have to make sure that you have a lawyer, right? The only thing that you can say once you hand over that card, you shouldn't say anything, first of all, because you need to stay silent. They will try and use anything that you say against them in a court of law. So don't say anything. The only thing you can say is, I'm going to call a lawyer. I expect to take my call. And so people need to memorize something in their head. Who are they going to call to say, hey, I've been taken? Because then the next step is to find legal representation for that person who's now being taken over, right? And so another tactic we see is that ICE is trying to take people who are being detained far, far away to a different detainment center that is not close to their family. And that's important
Mhm.
because they don't want their lawyers to find them. They don't want them to have legal representation. They don't want to see protests outside of a detainment center in support of someone who's in there. They don't want that. So yeah, have your red card, have a number on file, and have a plan for your family as well. That's so important, is like, what kinds of documentation do you need to bring with you? Do you need to bring your, have your government issued ID on you all the time? Do you need to carry your court waiting date paper? Do you need to have a list of phone numbers for every single person in your family? Do you need to have a record of your medications? Do you also need to carry a couple days worth of medication with you? If you are worried that you might get stopped, then you have, you can tell the agents, I have this in my bag, I need it to survive. And they have to, provide it for you. And so that way you're not like, you want to make sure that you're okay. So people really need to know what their rights are. They need to know them well. They need to start connecting with people in their communities, so that folks can create coalitions of trust and clear information. And we need to be supporting people who are afraid right now.
Yeah, I found this website, ilrc.org, Immigrant Legal Resource Center.
Yes.
For the red cards. So you guys can go, because I'm like, where do I get a red card? Like, that's what I looked up. Where do I get a red card? That was so informative.
On that website are all of the different languages that you can just click on it, and it's free to print if you want to, or I think there is an option to order it directly to your address.
So you guys, look, if you know someone, share this information with them, because it's very, very important, especially in this time that we live in today. That was a lot. So,
and also, like, I just want to mention, you can always approach someone if you think they're ICE. You can say, are you an ICE agent? And they might respond. Sometimes they do. Yeah. We've seen cases of that in Dutchess County when agents are approached, or in New York City, they answer, yeah. Or they'll say, like, I'm a federal agent, or like, who are you? Or they'll try and, like, have that tactic of brushing it off.
What does an ICE agent look like? Why would you even ask that? I wouldn't even think to be like, are you an ICE agent? Like,
yeah,
they have a certain look or something. Like,
yes and no. Believe it or not, there are Black and brown people who are ICE agents as well.
Yeah. So that's why I'm like, why would you?
Latina people who are ICE agents, and so they can look like anyone. Oftentimes they can wear a vest that might say,
isn't it green?
Homeland Security. It can be if it's a border patrol. So there's different like levels of customs enforcement. There's your local police, right? So it's important to know your local police. Are they working with ICE or not?
That's a good question.
Right? You have to figure out, are your local jurisdictions going to keep you safe? And it's important that they do, in my opinion, because you don't want a family to not call you if they're in an emergency because they're worried that they might be picked up. Right. I think it's becoming a dangerous situation. And so what do ICE agents look like? Oftentimes they're in plain clothes. They come around in groups. They drive usually in U.S. manufactured vehicles like Impalas or Fords, tinted windows with lights on the grill. Sometimes you can look in the back and see if there's a cage. And they often work in groups or pairs. You'll never really see one person by themselves. And we've also seen common people working with ICE. So, hateful people in a community doing their dirty work, like breaking people's car.
They have ICE snitches? Oh my!
They do.
God.
And there was this one case, I can't remember what state it was in right now, but there was a woman in her car with her children or something, and someone broke a window of her car to get her out. And it wasn't an agent. It was a
hateful person.
It was someone who was affiliated with a hate group who was working with them to carry out their dirty work so that ICE agents couldn't necessarily get in trouble for committing that, right? So I think it's hard to tell when someone is an ICE agent. You can go up to them. You can ask them. I don't know if they'll tell you. Sometimes they're mostly in jeans or a dark top, but look for groups of people in pairs, tinted windows, large vehicles moving together and stuff like that.
Wow. That's pretty scary.
Yeah.
That's pretty scary. What advice do you have for people who want to help, because there are people who want to help. So what I mean, I'm looking at the time. It was 8 o'clock. At first, she was like, "I only have 45 minutes."
It's
And
okay.
I don't want to
Let's
hold
take
you.
our time.
So, what
Yeah.
advice would you give for people that want to help people?
Oh, sorry. I see one comment here in the chat that I maybe want to answer before we move on. Can ICE go into a precinct and detain? This is also a complicated question because
That's a good question, Shamika.
it's a very complicated question. If there is someone who has committed a crime and is being held in a local precinct,
Then they should be. Well, no, they have to have their day in court, right? And then be like deported if they committed a crime.
I want to preface this by saying I'm not an immigration lawyer. And I want to have the specifics to this, but I would think if they were detained in a precinct for a criminal act, they would be given a lawyer.
Right.
But if someone was in a precinct and they were in the waiting area and they were speaking to an officer, there's nothing to stop an ICE agent from going in there and, approaching them. And I also think that it depends on the precinct and what their policies are. So it's a complicated answer. I'm sorry, Shamika. But your question earlier was like, what advice do I have for folks or
who want to help?
Yeah. Well, I think the most basic thing that someone can do right now is to reflect on why they have the values that they do or the thought patterns that they do. Did someone hurt them when they were younger? And it also influenced them to be violent in some way, either like directly or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we have to be able to grapple with our own reflection before we can try and change with the approach that we have with others, right?
When appearing at courts, a lawyer was arrested for showing her. Yes, I saw that. How a lawyer was arrested.
That's a little bit different, and it was actually a judge who was arrested, and she was angry because ICE had come into the building and she was trying to have her conversation and with these people, and like they shouldn't have been there.
Right.
So there's
she was doing her job.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. So oftentimes, like if someone is going in for their follow-up with ICE, we've been seeing them just detaining them at those follow-ups.
Oh, wow.
If people do have a court appearance for, like a DUI or something very chill, nothing like big, ICE can often does wait outside of a court and follow people back to their cars or on the street or something like that. So,
wow.
Yeah. And then kind of like moving on, I would recommend for folks to get involved in the community. My mom is saying rally, demonstrate, but I think that you have to start with
kind of scary.
Yeah, I think that you have to first start with like having conversations with people that you've never met in your community before. Like what restaurants can you go to that you've never supported before? What conversations can you spark up with the owners? Like what's going on in their life and find those commonalities, right? And then I think that it's important for people to be reaching out to local centers like Adelante Student Voices, Rural Migrant Ministries, legal services who are working with advocacy groups to ask them, what are your needs? Where do you need me? And everyone has a different capacity. Right. People can donate money either directly to a foundation or maybe to a family and help them coordinate getting groceries if they're worried, if a family's worried about going out in public. Is there some way that you can assist your neighbor in making them feel safer just by, bringing groceries? Or if for some reason they need a ride for their child to get to school because they're worried about their children walking alone to school. Like those are small things that we can do, right, to make the community feel a little bit safer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can also like volunteer at an event. You can direct call to your regional offices and support policies that would protect vulnerables. In New York State, I'll mention a couple of things that we are actively lobbying for as advocates. We want to pass the New York for All bill, which would prohibit state and local officials from being diverted to carry out an inhumane and cruel deportation agenda. So right now we've been seeing, like in the state of Florida, local officials are collaborating with ICE. They hit a nightclub and they arrested over like 800 people. And so
that's Florida, right?
That's in Florida, right? But it is up to the local law enforcement agencies in New York State right now to make their own policies about, supporting ICE or not.
Mhm.
And so this would secure it in our legislation in the state of New York that even if there was a federal mandate that these police would go and, get the addresses of folks who don't have papers or all of these things, that they will not be utilized for that it would require the president to fucking find another way. So New York for all, we want that. Please pass it. Please call people, whoever is your representative, get to know your representative, have their number on speed dial. New York for all, call every single day. We also want to pass the Access to Representation Act. This is the first ever in the nation that would establish the right to counsel in immigration court. So we have an estimated backlog in New York State of 330,000 pending immigration cases and growing. And it's important that lawmakers and everyone prioritize boosting legal services for these folks. And also, just reach out to your neighbors, love one another, don't be afraid, come out to play, be curious about the versions of yourself that you haven't met yet, and breathe into the spaces where you feel uncomfortable, because I think there's a difference between feeling unsafe and feeling uncomfortable. And I think that what is happening in our country is to make people feel unsafe. And we need to get to the point where we're uncomfortable, but we are protecting one another, and we are not allowing our boundaries to be pushed, that we stand firm in a peaceful self, because we cannot meet violence with violence. I don't think that, in my opinion, that would work. So we really have to work on ourselves and our hearts.
Yeah.
And that's the first step. Yeah.
You're such a sweetie. Before I let you go, because
Yeah.
this has just been an amazing conversation. I've learned so much. I mean, this was okay. All right. I'm learning stuff. I'm learning. But before I let you go, what gives you hope right now? Is there anything that gives you hope?
Yeah. What gives me hope right now is what gives me hope right now is the fact that I spend every single day journaling a little bit.
Mhm.
And I am seeing the people in my life, change in the ways that they're approaching me with more kindness and with more gentleness. And I'm able to hold a boundary. And I think that is giving me hope, because I feel so small sometimes. And I feel like I don't know that I could by myself dismantle, the US government and reframe it. But I know that I can drop my drop of water in the ocean, and that it would cause a ripple. And so I'm hoping that the people in my life that are being affected by me continue to be inspired by that, and they make action that feels good for them in their life. And so I'm also feeling very inspired by the youth, the little children of today, and continuing to push myself to be the question I keep asking myself is, in 10 years, what do I want to tell my kids that I did during this time?
Mhm.
And I don't want to live with any regrets, ever, in any situation. If I want to eat that candy bar, I'm going to eat that candy bar, and it's going to feel good. And
Yes.
that's the type of life that I want to live. So young people are giving me hope. They're the reason that I'm continuing, because the world that we create today is the world they live in tomorrow. And if we didn't have it, that's not a good argument to say that other people don't deserve it. We should continue to push for that. So, yeah.
Very good. Well, it was such an honor to have you on here tonight. It really
Thank you so
was.
much for having me. I'm
Absolutely.
nervous and excited, and I feel so held by your audience as well. I'm so thankful for all the people that got on here, and
Yeah.
the space that you've allowed for conversations like this to take place. The work that you're doing is so important
Thank
and
you.
so valuable. And thank you also for sharing yourself with the world. It's important.
Thank you so much. But her voice is gigantic, right? We learned it's going to touch so many people. Because like I told you, for people that didn't catch it live, people are going to share it. So it's going to be spread all over, and it'll be on the different podcast platforms. So your voice is going to be out there, and you drop some knowledge on us today. So I appreciate you so much. I do. And I thank you so much once again for taking time out from your study time to be here with me and the Tea Time with Bunky viewers. So
Yes, of course.
everybody, you guys, listen to the advice that she gave. Be kind. Be kind. That's basically what it is. Be kind, because you don't know what somebody's going through. You don't know what's going on in your neighbor's house. Help out. You see your neighbor, ask them if their child needs a ride to school. Ask them, do they need some hamburger buns or something like that? You know, like the little things, you know, like it's the little things.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to also sing with you all one day. I would love to sing and play music and celebrate with you too, and celebrate over some food and, you know, time together. So I hope that there will be a space for all of us to just relax and realize that we're all here for one another.
Relax. That's the words.
Yeah.
Some of us, myself, wound so tight we about to pop. So it's like, so I'm getting ready to end this episode. Once again,
Yes.
like, share, follow, subscribe, share this episode with someone that you know, or just put it on your page, because it will help somebody getting into good trouble. That's basically what you're doing. And it's all good. It's all good. It's scary, but it's good. So I will see you all next week. Tea Time with Bunky, live at 7 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Tell a friend, and no stories too big, no stories too small. I appreciate you.